Okay, welcome everybody to another episode in the Business Ready for Sale podcast. Business ready for sale because a business that's ready for sale is well worth keeping. And in these podcasts, I not only talk about how to get your business ready for sale and how to sell it, but also how to improve the value and increase the saleability of it. And that involves all the things that you would do, hopefully, would want to do in a business anyway. So, and I get along, of course, guest experts to talk to us about their particular areas of expertise that's going to help business owners. And today, I welcome a gentleman we've known each other quite a long time through national speakers and professional speakers, as it now is, Professional Speakers Association. And his name is Mike House. And Mike is a very interesting character. He's spoken a number of times to my mentoring groups. And, you know, when people talk about skydiving, they say, why would you throw yourself out of a perfectly safe plane? Mike doesn't do things like that, but he does things worse, takes himself off into the bush and tries to survive. And so far he has, which is very good. So Mike is a survival expert, and he's going to be talking to us today about his new book that he's written called Unshakeable. So dealing with uncertainty. So good day, Mike, and welcome to the podcast.
G'day, John. Thanks for the invite.
Pleasure to have you here again. It's the last time we spoke, we had not long gone into lockdown at the beginning of this pandemic, and it was we spoke about how you think and behave when you're under the pump. And I guess we're sort of 12 months or more on from that now, and we've been very fortunate in WA in Western Australia to avoid a lot of those lockdowns and problems that other parts of the country and other countries in particular have had. But the one thing that we have had, and the one thing that my clients, business owners, struggle with, is just the uncertainty of everything. I mean, we don't know from 1 minute to the next what's going to happen. I mean, I'm hoping to go to a footy match tonight, but you know, the last time I was hoping to go to a footy match, it all got stopped 2.5 hours before. And think of the impact that has on the stadium, where they've ordered all this food in, rostered on thousands of staff, and then it all gets cancelled 2.5 hours before. So, Mike, I've done enough talking. Tell us your take on all of this and what's happening in the business world with uncertainty and the environment we're in now.
Yeah, it's a great question, isn't it, John? And I think you're right. There's initially when we went into lockdown, there was a lot of conversation about this being unprecedented, and I actually don't think that's helpful, because I don't really think that it is unprecedented. You know, we go back 100 odd years to the Spanish flu, and it would have been similar impact, but in a very different looking world. And this level of uncertainty, many individuals and many businesses have probably experienced its equivalent, but it happens at a more business at a time, or person at a time, or family at a time level. So this has been probably the first time that we've seen a global impact like this. I think the uncertainty hits us at a few levels. So there's the initial response to something quite unexpected happening, and you know, that was sort of what we're talking about when we spoke immediately after lockdowns had been announced, where everyone's just kind of trying to come to grips with it. And I do a little bit of work in the crisis management space with firefighters and police, dealing with counterterrorism and oil spill responders and those sorts of people. And one of the areas that they talk about is there's the initial uncertainty of the incident itself, and you've kind of got to get your head around that and get yourself into a clear thinking and action-oriented footing. And then the next bit that's challenging is dealing with almost the recovery phase, which, because of its length and the way that it kind of grinds on, is actually quite a different mindset. There's, that crisis part's sort of short and sharp, and I think we're in that kind of recovery phase now where the implications are still massive, and it'll be rolling on for a good while yet. All the attempts to put timeframes on that, I think, are not particularly useful, and in fact even detrimental. We can possibly talk a little bit about that, but the impact for business owners is to what degree can you accurately plan and then execute your plan, given that there's fairly significant factors completely out of your control, like the government announcing another lockdown. And I think what's useful there is possibly to sort of divide your thinking into three. I picked up something from my old man who was a farmer. He used to say, what you want to do is plan for the best season ever. Plan for the worst season ever, expect the best season ever, and accept whatever you get. And there's a lot of wisdom in that. If you've got a plan for worst case scenario, which for us in WA at the moment is more lockdowns, I think it'd be highly unlikely that we get much worse than that. We could end up with longer duration lockdowns, but that's probably worst case scenario as it relates to COVID. Then, expect the best. So you have a sort of a hope for a better future than that. And the acceptance piece, I think, is really important, because what we often do in situations that are unpredictable is we waste a lot of energy wishing for something different and almost fighting against what is, and it doesn't get us anywhere.
It reminds me of Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah.
And sitting around waiting for the cheese to come back.
Yes.
Or in this case, waiting for things to get back to how they were pre-COVID. And there's never going to be a time when that happens, I don't think.
Yeah, look, I think there's types of businesses in the system now that you'd have to think that they were starting to get to the point of having to mitigate just the length of time they've been in it. You look at businesses like Qantas and other airlines, there'd have to be consideration in those kinds of businesses for how long can you hang on to the bar. The cost of having aircraft fleet parked in deserts around the world and just waiting for the switch to be thrown back to on must be enormous. They'd be bleeding capital. It's not easy for them to sell those assets because who'd want an A380 at the moment?
Exactly. Very cheap, yeah.
Yeah, you'd probably pick one up for $50 or something. You just have to get it from the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
And if some of those businesses start to scale down and or fail, that's some significant infrastructure that won't be able to be just switched back on. And, at a more local level, I think we're seeing that in the event space. I know there's a number of event hire companies that do things like staging and lighting and sound gear and that sort of thing that have got a huge warehouse full of equipment that they've built up over 30 years of running those businesses. Very little cash flow at the moment. They're getting bits and pieces, but nowhere near what they had pre-COVID. And for some of them, it must be the same story. How long can you hang in? And if they fail, that's a piece of infrastructure that the community's effectively lost. So that'll be interesting to see what the playthrough of some of that is. And if you were in a business where some of those systems failing had a direct impact on you, then I'd be considering what you might do in response to that.
Yeah, because there's a flow-on effect, isn't there? If those businesses fold up, then there's the people that supply those industries and get employed by those industries. It flows right down the chain.
Yes. Yeah. And in both directions, the people that they supply and as you say, also the people that supply them. So,
So how can business owners sort of try and navigate their way through all of this?
So I think there's in the book Unshakeable, I talk about paradoxes where there's two truths that are simultaneously true. and they seem directly in opposition to each other. So an example of that would be, rough enough's good enough versus continuous improvement. You want to be doing things at a level of excellence, but there's a time and a place for a quick and dirty solution as well. And it's all, I picture that almost like a slider on a sound mixing desk, where you're choosing the level you set it at. So I think we need to be really conscious about what those sliders might look like and where we set them. So for example, one of the sliders that I would have in mind at the moment is the split between long-term strategic thinking and positioning versus short-term opportunistic, really pragmatic action. And some of the balance points in that, I've seen a number of businesses go highly reactive through COVID, and it's almost like they've done that to the extent that they've really drifted off their reason for being from their purpose, and they're starting to become a little bit diluted and schizophrenic almost as a result. They're not quite sure who they are anymore.
Yeah.
And they probably need to shift the slider back towards the longer term view and a bit more of that purpose and strategy. And then there's others who are sort of, they've got the knob set hard up against long-term purpose and strategy. And it's a bit like the who moved my cheese thing. It's like, well, that's not happening right now, so I guess I'll just wait. Probably need to dial it into a bit more of a pragmatic footing. And I think that's a business by business decision, really, is where you set that slider.
Yeah, and that's covered in the book. Okay, we'll talk about the book a bit more in a little while.
Sure.
So when it comes down to, what I find with how a lot of business owners run their business comes down to their personality. You've got the people that are long-term planners but are slow to get into action, as you say. And then you've got people that are all action and don't do any planning.
Yeah.
And, there's a nice middle ground there somewhere. But, what about survivors? Is there a particular personality type that survive better than others?
Yeah, so there's actually a whole area of research in the field of psychology that looks at the survivor personality. And they're basically what they research is the kind of character traits that help people to survive against the odds. And, that research has been conducted across a whole range of fairly dire human experiences, everything from lost or stranded in the outback to a severe accident or illness through to large-scale business bankruptcies, natural disasters, large-scale community events like, a terrorist attack or something like that. Huge range of human experience, and they come up with some quite consistent themes of the attributes that help people to survive. So one of them is they very much have an internal locus of control, and that's a bit of psychology babble that basically means they feel as though they're in command of their destiny. And as opposed to, it's all about fate or something external to them, the universe conspiring for them or against them, or that kind of mindset. And they're very, very good at looking at the things that are directly within their control and taking action there. So, an example of that would be we had a forecast here in Perth today for severe weather. Someone who had an external locus of control would go, well, it's in God's hands. If the house floats away down the river, there's nothing I can do about that. Someone with an internal locus of control would say, well, I can't do anything about the weather, but I can sandbag my house or, clean the gutters out or, make sure the car's parked undercover. And they'd be looking at all the things that they could do that would ensure that the situation had the minimum possible impact on them. So that's one thing. The second thing is that they are very, very good at finding things to be grateful for, even when the going gets tough. And the interesting thing about gratitude is it's one of the simplest things that we can do to shift our psychological state in a positive direction. And it gives us a sense of hope and of progress, even when things are difficult. And then the third one is a sense of humour that shows up over and over again. And in really dire situations, often that humour is quite black. So and they think that that's partly about, if you joke about the really serious things, it gives you a way of talking about it, where if you just sat down and had a very serious conversation about it, it would almost be overwhelming. So the black humour is almost like a less abrupt and brutal way of having that conversation, and keeps the mood a little bit light around it too. It's not the key here is none of this stuff is about rose-coloured glasses. It's, fully facing the reality, but dealing with it with a level of optimism that would perhaps otherwise be missing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sense of humour wasn't one of the things that came to mind when I was thinking of survival personality, but yeah, that's fascinating. So I think I would be okay. I've got a sense of humour. It's just that nobody understands it.
I understand your problem. I think I have the same one.
But I'll take it as a positive.
Yes.
That I've got it. Yeah. Yeah. So again, it's that thing about what you can control and what you can't, isn't it? Stop stressing and worrying about things you can't control.
Yes.
But at least you can prepare for them.
That's right. And look, that's a challenge, I think, for all of us, because it's very easy when something comes along that disrupts us and is deeply uncertain. It's very easy to slip into that kind of victim mindset where we feel as though we have no control and it's all happening to us and it's all too hard. And, it's almost sort of wishing and hoping that something or someone will bail us out. And that's perfectly natural. The question is, how quick can you get out of that state into one that says, all right, what can I make of this? And, as COVID goes on, I think that's a really important footing to get onto a proactive and positive footing that's starting to make, command the narrative, write the story you want to write rather than be at the victim of other things.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some people just like to play victim. But anyway, I know in another conversation you talked about resilience and the fact that it's being overused, a term that's overused at the moment. What do you mean by that, Mike?
So I think there's three elements to that. One is that, if you're a human being, let me rewind slightly. There's a lot of organisations that seem to be saying, if we can just give John more resilience, then everything will be okay. That's what we need. We need our people to be more resilient. And they miss a fairly critical thing, which is that if we're human, we already have resilience in spades. One of the things that human beings do incredibly well is be resilient. We are fantastically good at adapting to pressure and change and uncertainty. It's not comfortable, but we're good at it. The second piece, I think, is that there's this almost illusion that's been built around resilience that feels a bit like if you got it, then things won't be hard. And in my mind, resilience is a lot like courage. The only time you need courage is if you're crapping yourself, so you don't need it if you're not scared. And you don't need resilience unless your back's to the wall, unless things are hard. So resilience doesn't make things easy. It just means that you can deal with it when things are hard. And then the third piece, which I think is really important for organisations and businesses, particularly as this grinds on a bit, is I think it's a very easy excuse to avoid looking at the systematic things that our businesses do that make life hard. So we often build up bureaucracies and systems that are quite clunky and in and of themselves cause stress and pressure. And I think one of the things that we can definitely control at the moment is to look at our systems and try to streamline them and make them as easy and as seamless to use as possible. And that's very much your territory as well, right, John? Because, a business with effective and easy to use systems is probably one that's worth selling and therefore one that's worth keeping.
Yeah, well, a quote that I steal from my former partner, Alan Nelson, is that one of his favourite sayings was, simple businesses make money, complex ones don't. And over the years, you just see that all the time. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Simplifying is so important.
So, a good question to ask at the moment, I think, is rather than how do we give our staff more resilience, or myself for that matter, I'd be asking how do I simplify my processes so that we take some pressure off our staff and off ourselves.
Absolutely. For some businesses, even have some systems.
Well, yes. How do I create some systems that mean I take pressure off myself?
Yeah, that's right. And as you say, it just makes it so much more saleable.
Absolutely.
When you've got good systems in there. If people can look at a business and it's simple and they can understand it, then they're more likely to buy it and pay more for it.
Yep.
But if they're struggling to understand what's going on, they'll just walk away, particularly these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know of a business that failed to sell because the owner's accountant, and we were talking about a $5 million sale here, but the accountant for the business had set the thing up so complex in order to save tax that the buyer's accountant couldn't understand it.
Wow.
So the deal fell through.
Yes.
There was money going everywhere between different entities, and one entity owned the assets and another entity employed the people and another entity didn't. And it was just an absolute, well, it probably worked as far as saving tax, but not when it came to selling the business. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Simple is good.
And, if we loop that back to resilience, the complexity of those systems for the owners and the staff of it, no doubt added at very minimum workload and probably stress and pressure to just keep everything going where it should go just because of its complexity.
Yeah. And if it's simple, you can see where you need to make changes. You can make good decisions then.
Absolutely.
To improve. You mentioned continuous and never-ending improvement. Well, when you got good systems, it becomes a lot easier.
Absolutely.
So any other tips for business owners to become more unshakable?
Look, I think right now, John, I'd be. We spoke last time about avoiding any sort of notion of end dates, and I think that's still just as valid and useful now as it was then. We're starting to see the latest version of that wish list is, when we get to X amount vaccinated, we'll have all sorts of additional freedoms, and the government's starting to make some forecasts about when that point might be. A little bit like when we first spoke, there was discussion about, international travel will be back on by X, or lockdowns will be over by Y. The reality is those situations are so complicated that predicting them with any certainty is a fairly difficult game, I would think.
Yeah.
Might as well just go on black at the casino. The challenge of setting dates in our minds is that it sort of puts an unrealistic hope into the mix. And if those dates pass and we're still in the current sort of complexity, that's almost like an erosion of hope, and it actually adds stress that we can avoid. So one of the things that I would be doing is very clearly saying, look, we don't know when this will be over. I would be expecting more lockdowns. They may or may not happen. They may or may not be short or long, but I'd have them clearly in my expectation and be planning for them. That way, when they happen, they're not a surprise. And if they don't, well, that's a bonus. And I'd probably be looking for what are some of the opportunities in your space that are actually created by the current situation. So, I've been doing a little bit of strategy work with a mining company based in the UK. They've got operations in Turkey and other parts of Eastern Europe. And, for them, COVID's actually created a fairly massive opportunity for their business model. They use very localized teams, and so travel's never been a massive issue for them. With the increasing environmental awareness that the lack of travel and other things COVID related have done, people are getting much more aware of our environmental footprint, and they're a very long playing, environmentally savvy mining group. So they're combining those things for a real strategic edge in their space, and potentially they'll actually be able to rewrite how the mining sector thinks about sustainability and investment. And if they can do that, that will be a massive strategic advantage to them. They were thinking about anyway, but that has been really enhanced by the COVID scenario. So I'd be kind of looking for things like that. What in my world right now are the opportunities created by this, regardless of how it plays out, how long it takes to resolve all of those kinds of things. What are the opportunities that I could create right now?
Yeah, pressure is always a good catalyst for change.
Mm.
And I think, a lot of things that were going to happen anyway, with more people working from home and all this sort of change in the business environment, has just been accelerated by this whole pandemic situation. That's good and bad. I mean, we could have done without it.
That's right.
But I'm sure there will be some good things come out of it as well.
Mm.
I mean, in terms of your business, I mean, it must have impacted your business because you tell people what you do. You take people out into the bush and all that kind of thing.
So the survival course stuff I haven't done for a while now, but we run leadership retreats in the bush, and I do a lot of conference speaking and face-to-face workshops, and 100% of that business initially just disappeared. So there was probably a three-day process in the initial lockdowns where we went from a very healthy pipeline out to about sort of 8 to 12 months that completely dried up. Some of that work we were able to shift to online platforms and carry on, but a lot of it just got cancelled because businesses were uncertain about the future, and so anything that wasn't considered essential spend just got snapped down pretty quick. I've managed to adapt quite a lot of stuff, either 100% online, so live via platforms like Zoom or Teams, and or pure online delivery where it's pre-recorded stuff that people can access. We've been doing a lot of mixed blend with live in room and then online pieces, which seems to be working really well. And there's been a few opportunities created where international or eastern states experts haven't been able to get to Western Australia, and so local people are a safer bet right now in the current environment. So that's creating all kinds of opportunities, so that those first few months were pretty much flatline. The financial year turned out to be pretty decent. It certainly wasn't the best financial year that we've had, but 3 months of it were almost at zero, so that's a pretty it was still above average.
Yeah.
And the future from here is looking pretty good, especially given the territory that I primarily play in. There's still so much uncertainty going on, and people are starting to be more proactively looking for solutions to that.
Yeah. So you got any more bush adventures coming up or planned?
My next foray into the bush is actually a bit of work with a mine site this week. So I'm flying up to the Pilbara to do some stuff with the construction crew up there, and we're looking at putting a spring retreat series together, which will take us probably about 4 hours drive north of Perth for something like 4 days with a small group of leaders.
I am not going to sign up for them. I like my home comforts too much, but I will recommend them.
Very good. We actually that's the retreat one is pretty comfortable anyway. It's bush based, but sleeping in swags in a very comfortable environment, and lots of very, very good food. We're not putting people into survival mode for that. It's the point is more sitting around campfires and testing ourselves in other ways than survival. So,
okay, that's getting closer to the mark.
Yes.
Yeah, but this whole planning thing. My wife and I, we like to travel.
Yes.
And of course, we're pretty much restricted to WA, which, considering WA is 4 times bigger than France.
Yeah.
And you've got everything from very cool climate down south to tropical in the north. We've got plenty to play with.
Yes.
But, we were looking, well, we were hoping to be able to go to Tasmania, and we were hoping to go to the Aussie Open tennis again in January and everything, but we've just now stopped even thinking about any of those things
Mm.
because it's just so uncertain. I mean, New South Wales is closed down, um, and I really feel for a lot of business owners, particularly those in hospitality and the industries that get shut down first when things happen.
Yes. Yeah.
Because for
Oh,
them to plan is just impossible, really, to long-term plan.
very difficult. Yeah. So that sort of slide the dial back towards the pragmatic end a little bit in terms of, are there short-term cash flow opportunities that can be grabbed? And, probably the planning for people in things like hospitality is to have a really good plan for what do we do if we get a lockdown announcement. And I'd almost be thinking scenarios like, what if they tell us it's tomorrow? What if they tell us it's in a week? What does that look like? I think it's well worth having some of that kind of scenario planning pre-thought through, because it takes the pressure off when it happens. Then you're just activating a plan rather than scrambling to keep up.
Yeah, that's right. Scenario planning is good anyway in any business.
Yes, absolutely.
And yes, I've got a couple of hospitality clients in my mentoring group, and I know that when we had this last lockdown, and I asked Andrew what was going to happen, he said, "Oh, it's fine. We just switch back into lockdown mode where we can only do takeaway."
Yes.
We've done it before. We know how to do it now.
Yep.
It worked last time. We just switch modes.
Yes.
So it's important to learn from these things. And
Yeah,
as you
absolutely.
say, have a plan for if it happens again. So how can people get hold of your book? I'm sure people have been wanting to get a copy of that, and they should.
So Unshakeable is available at my website, which is mikehouse.com.au. So that's mikehouse.com.au.
Beautiful. So they can go on there and they can find out about your retreats and all the other services that you provide, I presume, as well.
That's it. Yeah, that or LinkedIn. If you look me up on LinkedIn, I've got a pretty active profile there too.
Excellent. And yes, most people should be on LinkedIn.
Yeah, indeed.
I can't believe how long ago it was when I got on LinkedIn.
Yes.
So through another friend in National Speakers, that was.
Right. Yes.
Long time ago, Kian.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's certainly a handy network for professional things.
Yeah. There's a lot of good stuff on there and a lot of good people on there. So, All right, Mike. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
The last thing I'd probably say, John, is just to remind people that we've got this. We've got this collectively. Human beings. The thing that sets human beings apart from every other species on the planet is our ability to change our circumstances and to rise above the things that happen to us. We're a very, very clever thinking species, and particularly when you put us collectively. So you've got this, whatever this looks like for your business, there will be ways forward and ways around or ways over. And as long as you continue to operate in that space where you have direct control of it, I think you'll do well.
Okay, excellent. All good advice. So, Mike, we're out of time. So I want to thank you very much again for coming and giving us valuable lessons. And yes, I just keep coming back to the survival thing. It's, it's so relevant to what's happening, and the thoughts about getting to become unshakable. I look forward to reading the book.
Thanks, John. Thanks very much for the invite as well.
And I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Indeed.
All right, Mike. Thanks and good day, and bye for now.
See ya.
Thank you, Mike House, for some great insights and great takeaways there that we can use in our business to deal with uncertainty and become unshakable. Some key takeaways for me on this chat with Mike was work on what you can control and don't waste time on what you can't. I know it sounds obvious, but quite often and I'm sure other business owners as well, will spend time worrying about and stressing about things that are just totally out of their control. As Mike said, work on the things you can control. Plan for the worst and hope for the best, so that if the worst happens, well, at least you've got a plan for it, but you're hoping for the best and have a plan for the best. And we talked a little bit there about scenario planning as well, which is something that I recommend all business owners do, to plan for uncertainty and change and things that might come up so that they don't take you by surprise and sideswipe you, and learn from the past as well. As I mentioned, some of the business owners I work with have now got a plan in place and have previously worked through lockdowns. So if it happens again now, they've got everything set up. They can simply go into lockdown mode and continue to work. So scenario planning and planning for different circumstances. Simplify systems and processes. Have some good systems and processes, because if you want to sell your business and have your business ready for sale, it needs to be running on systems and processes. So simplify them. Simple businesses make money, complex ones don't. And it's easier to improve systems if they're simple and not over complex. Have an attitude of gratitude. That was a great one as well. We all need to be grateful for what we do have and not stressing all the time about what we want or don't have. So have an attitude of gratitude. Be grateful for your health. If we've got good health, which I believe I have, then I'm really grateful for that. Be grateful for relationships, family, friends, clients. There's lots of things that we can really be grateful for if we think about it. And a great one when talking about survival and survival psychology and personalities that survive. Mike mentioned have a sense of humor. Be able to laugh at some of the bad things that are happening. So have a sense of humor. So I hope you got lots of takeaways from it too. If you want any more from me, you can contact me at john@johndenton.com.au, or you can go to my websites, johndenton.com.au, and my online stuff and mentoring membership programs are at johndenton.online. And I look forward to the next podcast. And don't forget to check out Mike's book, Unshakeable, which you can find and buy at Mike's website, which is mikehouse.com.au. So thank you for listening. Subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss any future episodes, and you can always go back and look over some of the interesting episodes that I've done in the past. So for me, John Denton, it's bye for now.